Tastemakers in the watch game like Gear Patrol have called their ceramic watch material almost magical and deemed their adventure-ready Cali Diver Automatic GMT the best sub-$500 dive watch, full stop. It's our friends at Movement. A Movement watch is built to run with precision, purpose, and X factors needed to make the best of the time you keep. From their best-selling automatics to innovative ceramics to more clean, inspired designs. Find your new Movement now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.
You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley.
I'm Andy Edmunds. I'm the director of the Virginia Film Office, and you might know some of the projects that I've worked on in Virginia, being a state with many historic assets. Of course, we've done many period films. And in fact, I've done 5 Lincoln movies in Virginia, including Spielberg's Lincoln, that I worked on that for 9 years. So as a film commissioner, we try to bring them here, but then we help them solve problems while they're here. And what I'm excited about working on right now is a project with Apple called Raymond and Ray that has Ethan Hawke and Ewan McGregor, a great project with Rodrigo Garcia directing. And it's the second time recently we've had Ethan Hawke in Virginia because we did a fabulous show called The Good Lord Bird limited series that was really, really, really good. One of the best things I think we've ever done in Virginia, and I recommend it highly. So I'm happy to be here with you, Chris, and thanks for having me.
Andy Edmunds, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. And to give this audience a little bit more depth on who you are and where you've been, I'm going to read a bit from your bio. As I always say, ad nauseum, this is the internet. So if anything sounds incorrect or wrong, feel free to correct me. If you want to make an amendment or an addendum to that bio, you can do that as well. Andy
I made
Edmunds,
it all up anyway. It's all fiction anyway. Yeah, I made it up. So just roll with it.
Here we go. Andy Edmunds, director of the Virginia Film Office, is a Virginia native and an accomplished musician and songwriter. After studying music at VCU in the mid-'80s, Edmunds produced a music video of one of his songs that was broadcast on MTV. This experience introduced him to the film production industry, where he ultimately settled in as a location scout until landing a job at the Virginia Film Office in 1997. During his time with the Film Office, Andy has worked with the most notable filmmakers of our time, including Terrence Malick, Ridley Scott, Clint Eastwood, and Steven Spielberg. Andy, I'd love to start with Rita McClenney. Who is Rita McClenney, and how did she propel you into the world of film?
Rita McClenney is my dear friend and my boss, but mainly my dear friend. But she is the CEO of Virginia Tourism Corporation, which is kind of the overarching entity that the Film Office is part of, because filmmakers are like super tourists with a payroll anyway. So we are part of tourism. Rita is the CEO, and she was the film commissioner before me. So as I was struggling along as a musician, trying to make my way as a self-employed musician for so long, I eventually found my way into film by virtue of doing the video as you described. And little by little, I became fascinated with film production and, made a living doing both things for quite a while. And then, to be honest with you, my wife and I had our first child about 7 years ago, and I needed health insurance, right? So I got a real job, right? So I knew Rita and the people at the Film Commission here in Virginia, and I'd been working in location. So actually I went to the Film Office and said, look, we need to convert this whole locations library. We had all these manila folders of photographs of locations all over the state and file cabinets after file cabinet, right? And I said, we need to convert this to digital. And this was in like 96, and it was a new kind of thing. And some people were going, well, what's that? What do you mean? I said, well, we're good. Everything's going to go digital. We need to scan this in. What a novel concept. And we need to scan in these thousands of pictures and put them into some kind of database. And so we can search them by keyword. So we could, create a system where we could easily access these images. And I don't even know where I, got this ability to think of it in those terms. I was into science and stuff. So I read Wired magazine or whatever. So I knew that this was the direction we were going. So I went to Rita and said, let me help you do this process. And we can send them out to Virginia Tech or some college and get, graduate students to scan all this stuff. And I said, let me do this for you at the film office. And by the way, do you have any jobs here? And I said, I'll work for you for free. I offered actually to work for the film office for free when I first came there. And God bless Rita McClenny. She said, no, this sounds like a great idea. I trust what you're doing. I don't really understand it, but we'd love to have you on board here at the film office. We know you've been working in production and have the ability to, bring clients here and keep clients satisfied. So yeah, take it on, but I'm not going to let you work for free. So God bless her. She gave me a job, and then I started working there as the location manager for the film office. And she actually let me write my own job description, which was awesome. What kind of boss lets you do that? She said, come on board. I'm going to pay you. You get health insurance. And by the way, you can write your own job description. So from then on, I just kind of became the thing that wouldn't leave, and I was just there, and I just became the guy, to go to help you with projects. When clients came, I was the one that would drive them around and show them places and try to get them hooked on Virginia. And really, the thing about Rita, though, is that as a leader, she was the kind of person that put a lot of trust in you. And, you have to earn trust, but she gave me that trust, and she still has to this day. I mean, she's the CEO of tourism, and I've been around it for 25 years. And just by that trusting relationship, she's given me the rope and the technology to do whatever I need to do to serve our customers and serve our clients, and has trusted me to do so. And it's been a great success. And I just feel lucky to do something that I love doing. And Rita was the one to kind of give me the opportunity to find my second half of my life, basically.
Yeah. What an amazing story. And she certainly trusts a lot. And because, like you said, you got to write your own job description. It's funny, you mentioned health insurance. And I think everyone brings that up. And I have this theory, I've had it for a while, that the reason we don't have universal health care is because the second that gets enacted, 50% of all the people that work for corporations will quit the next day. It is literally the carrot at the end of the stick for so many working Americans, especially creative people in America that would love to quit their job, but they can't because they can't afford to lose their health insurance or go on COBRA. So anyway, that is a total sidebar. But
no, you're right. You're right. I mean, what a kickstart that would be to entrepreneurialism and people starting their own businesses. You're right. If we just, it would light it up.
Yeah. The long-term effect would be net positive. The short-term effect would be net negative. And a lot of times what we're afraid of is that short-term pain. Right. There's a lot of things I think that we could fix, from monetary system to climate change, if we could endure some sort of short-term pain, even down to the pandemic. If you can endure short-term pain, you'll have a long-term net positive. But a lot of times we just can't face it. We don't have the courage to face it.
Well, what you're also thinking there, Chris, is you think that people in our culture and society today have patience. We don't have patience for anything now. If we don't get instant gratification, it's just not going to happen. We're just wired for that.
It's true. You mentioned working for free, and now Rita was good enough to say, hey, I can't let you work for free. But so many folks that we've interviewed on this podcast have told us they got their start by doing just that, taking a chance on themselves, working for free, and then having a big payoff later down the line after they threw themselves sort of in the arena. At the same time, there's a cohort of folks in film that say, never work for free. You should never be working for free. Obviously, we just had the strike averted with IATSE. So it's like, well, how do you navigate that? Do you think as an independent film creative, the idea of working for free versus saying, no, I have X amount of worth, no matter where I'm at in my career?
Right. And I talk to film students a lot about, and this is one of the things I touch upon. It's key that if you're going to do that, I believe, it has to have other value. You need to be under a mentor or in a situation that is going to give you room for growth, obviously. So, find a mentor that you want to aspire to be, and then be willing to, do whatever it takes to get in the door to them to prove yourself. And that might require working for free. Now, of course, it's easy to say that if you have the ability where you can, stay warm and keep food in your stomach, right? So, when I was doing and making that offer, I still had my side gig, or my regular gig as a musician. So it's a hard thing to express to people. And it just seems like today that notion is harder to get through to some people because there's a bit of entitlement of, some people that I've seen in various work situations that they are all about 9 to 5, where's my check, 9 to 5, I'm out the door. It maybe that's just because they don't have the self-employed hunger that, I'm just wired in the production world where it's not a 9 to 5 thing. We work when the work happens. And if the clients are, out till midnight, then we're with them, or if they're calling from the West Coast or whatever, the clock doesn't matter. So that does kind of break down the barrier of your work-life balance in a way. But that's why it's so important that you have a career that you love where, if it's something you love, it's really not work, right? So a lot of the people that I have in my industry that I have friendships with and relationships with, which are really everything, they are in fact my friends that I call upon if I'm looking for particular locations or particular solutions or permissions to do some crazy filming thing. It's through my network of friends that are already my friends anyway, that are helping me execute, hopefully, good service to the industry I serve. So it's all one ecosystem of friends and work, and it's hard to separate it sometimes. But if I love what I'm doing, it doesn't matter, to me.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's a filter. It's a filtering process. So for those who are doing it and view it as strictly like work, they may not have longevity because they don't love it. They don't view it as play that they happen to get paid for. A lot of my filmmaking friends, and I think the people that do it really well, they just view it as play, but other people see it as work, and therefore they get paid and they have leverage because of it. So I completely agree.
Film in particular, I mean, it is, as we've seen in recent, articles about the IA strike and everything, that it is incredibly long hours. And, you could tell within the first day of someone coming on set whether they're going to be able to hang, It's like, it's almost masochistic that you work 4 months straight, you work your butt off, 12, 13 hours a day, and then you collapse for like 2 weeks and sleep for 2 weeks to catch up. And you're like, oh my, and everybody hugs and kisses at the end. And it's this big emotional battle you've gone to together. And then it's over. And then, you 2 weeks, you sleep, and then you wake up and you miss it. And it's like a sickness that you have to get back into it again, no matter how torturous it seemed at the time. It's really interesting. The people that have that mindset that can do it, you can tell pretty quickly whether they can hang,
Absolutely. It's a highly entrepreneurial sort of positioning and temperament where you sprint and then you rest, reassess, and sprint again. I love that description.
Why? And actually, you sprint through a marathon. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. There's
sprinting through the whole marathon.
There was another one that was similar. There's someone said something similar to that. as well. And I can't remember exactly the turn of phrase, but it was brilliant. It was something just like that. That's exactly right. Your dad was a lawyer, and I think you wanted to be a lawyer too, but you turned to entertainment. So why did you decide to be an entertainer instead of a lawyer?
Well, my dad was the lawyer, historian, wise, intellectual, and my mother went to Juilliard, right? So, and it's all in the context of these two, let's say, culturally evolved folks, my parents, that had moved to rural Virginia in the 50s, right? In a small town of 1,200 people. And so my pathway was either going to be through his, under his teaching and learning, and I learned more from my father than I ever learned from school, or my mother's creative energy. And she's an amazing actress and singer, and she studied ballet actually at Juilliard. So I would fall asleep under the piano that I'm actually looking at in my piano room right now, a little baby grand piano, when I was 3-4 years old, and just fall asleep while she played piano. So it just got ingrained into my head, and so where my older siblings pursued more traditional routes of my oldest brother is a nuclear engineer with a PhD and an MBA. So I say my brother not only could he build a nuclear weapon, he could market and sell it if he had to, right?
Right.
My other brother, Mark, was on the board of Deloitte, right? So he was on the board of directors with Deloitte, Pacific Rim, over many huge clients, lived in San Francisco for years. And then my sister worked for CNN and all kinds of news and media world and production on that side as a reporter, the Seoul bureau of CNN, and produced Face the Nation and The Tomorrow Show, and crazy story how she got into the business. I'll tell you that in a minute. But so growing up in this town, it was interesting because I like to say I was kind of if Atticus Finch and Carol Burnett had a baby, that would be me. Those were the two role models for me.
Yeah.
But I just, you like to say, well, I decided to choose the easy path, be an artist. Yeah, right. So so from the time I was 13 years old, I learned how to play guitar, and I became this little hotshot guitar player at the age of 13. So I was playing in bands that were like in this country band at first, and they were like 30 years old, this husband and wife couple, and they had this country band, and I played guitar for them. And my parents actually let me go out and play at clubs with them. And I was 15 years old, going out to these clubs and playing music. And I was also in the high school band at the time. And my band director, I played clarinet in the high school band, and I didn't really want to play, but I did from elementary school. I was playing clarinet. So I became pretty good at clarinet, first chair. So my band director in high school wanted me to be in the marching band. And I hated being in the marching band. We were playing stuff like Disco Inferno and all this, 70s disco stuff that I really didn't like in a marching band that never sounds right anyway. The audio is terrible, whatever. So I didn't like it. So on Friday nights, my band director would say, man, you got to be at the game. You got to play in marching band. We need you. Your first chair clarinet. I'm like, dude, I've got a gig. He's like, what? I said, I'm playing, man. I'm playing a gig. I'm making a little coin, I'm 16, 17 years old. So my high school band director, CB Haskins, gave me a D in band, in high school. So to cap that off, though, and some great kind of coda, if you will, to that story. Many years later, when I produced my music video, and that's a whole nother story how I got to that. But
we'll get to that later.
Video.
Sure.
Yeah, but I did the video, and I wanted to see it on a big screen, right? So I found a Circuit City in Richmond, Virginia, that had the room where you could look at all the big screens and stuff. So I had my video on a VHS, and I found a big screen box TV so I could hear it through a stereo and watch my video on the screen. And I'm in Circuit City in Richmond, Virginia, and I play and I'm watching it. And the town I grew up in was 70 miles away. All of a sudden I turned around and CB Haskins, my high school band director, was in Circuit City walking past. And I said, hey, Mr. Haskins, how you doing? Andy, how have you been? Check it out, man. Look at my music video. It's going to be on MTV. He's like, what? So there was great justice to come back around and say, dude, you gave me a D in band. I'm going to be in MTV.
The universe put you guys in the same place with a lot of
did.
intentionality. So for anyone under 30 listening to this and anyone international, and Circuit City was probably the number one electronic store in America for, and maybe just on the East Coast of the United States, maybe nationally, but they were everywhere. And you went there and you bought everything from a Sony Walkman to a VCR to, anything you could imagine. The sales reps were on commission. It was an interesting place. It's a business model that just doesn't exist in electronic stores anymore. So just want to make sure we clarify Circuit City.
Exactly.
I've had one down the street from my house as a child, and I was in there all the time. Well,
on a quick side note about Circuit City, to go down the Circuit City lane, Circuit City started in Richmond, Virginia, right? And it went nationwide. Not know that. Yeah.
Wow.
And I had a gig working for them out of high school while I was still playing, music out of high school. And I got a gig through a friend of mine working there. And I had a gig where we would fly around the country and install these systems where you compare different car stereo systems, a little switching matrix system, right? So we would fly around the country and install these systems. It was a great gig. And in spite of how good that gig was, I could have really moved up in the company. On weekends, I was going to play with this band down in Virginia Beach. And my heart just kept pulling me away until I missed so much work that, my boss came to me one day and said, man, you don't really want to do this, do you? You want to play music for a living, don't you? I said, yeah, you're right. So he, kind of graciously let me resign and get out of there. But yeah, I had my time at Circuit City and music just kind of drew me away.
Wonderful stories. That's really great. And I have to say, we're going to talk about it again later, but from what I heard, you really are a fantastic guitar player and musician. And for me, being a musician as well, that hits home. And I know how much time you had to put into that to get good at it. I know that you did the music video and then that got you on the film production side and you met Rita, but how did you know you were going to like it? How did you know you were going to enjoy the world of, was there a moment where you worked with someone or you did a particular feature film or short film where you said, oh my God, like this is as good or better than music? Well,
purely because I was in the creative process in a way that music wasn't scratching that particular itch in terms of I would read a script or look at a storyboard when I was working freelance before I went to the film office. And the notion that I could, read a script and find a location that would solve the problem creatively. And there's a logistical puzzle around it too. And the satisfaction of then seeing that, up on screen just put me in the creative process with some really interesting people that were also in this mission together, and that just kind of got my buzz going on that whole process of, and now, I've been able to do it with so many different filmmakers of different degrees of style and tactics and success that I've just seen it at all levels of the production process and the creative process and the battle that plays out of the van between art and commerce. If you have, the director wants to film in the Grand Canyon, the producer wants you to film it in the quarry right outside of town, right? So if you're Spielberg, you tell the producer, well, go find some more money. I want to go film at the Grand Canyon. But if you're not, you have to make artistic compromises. So that's part of the puzzle too, is figuring out that way. And sometimes scrappy, lower budget films sometimes make a better product because they don't have too much money and they have to be efficient and they have to be creative in how they solve these problems. And sometimes to serve the story, it makes the story better too. I know I'm going down a rabbit hole and all of that, but that's how I knew that I had found something that I would be satisfied with in a career, was I was able to scratch my creative itch in that way. That being said, the first part of my life was pursuing my own creative dream as a songwriter, singer, musician. And so the second part of my life has been helping other people realize their creative dream. So at some point, I think I will get back to my own, intellectual property in some way and do my own thing. And I don't know if it's something that I will write and then produce as a film. I'm talking about a film or whatever it's going to be, whether it's an episodic thing or something. But I'm going to produce something because I've obviously collected and met and made a lot of great friends over my career here that want to help me or would help me do it. And I think that may be, after all my kids are, off in college and doing their thing, that might be the third chapter of what I do here, just to get back to my personal, selfish, creative desire.
Yeah, and selfish in the most positive way possible. Being able to scratch your own itch is so critical, and so important. And it's interesting you talk about being these problem-solving filmmakers, and that's part of the fun of it. It's true. And I always liken crew and directors and producers and the folks on set as storytelling engineers. They are literally, and this is the most unsung thing about filmmakers, they are some of the best problem solvers in any field.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
They could do anything they wanted to do, but they focused it on storytelling and this craft. But they had that skill, that technical skill to solve a problem, and then also do it visually, just to do it in space. And I find that to just be brilliant, but be one of the most fun things about being in this industry as well and producing films. I kind of put the cart before the horse a little bit, Andy, and probably for this audience, independent filmmakers, many of them, some of them experienced, a lot of them experienced, but some not. Could you explain the role and the relationship of, let's say, the Virginia Film Office to the film industry, or any film office to the film industry?
Sure. So there are over 350 film offices or film commissions around the world now. And all of them are there in an effort to attract production work into their state, province, city, country, whatever. Because when a film comes into a locality, they often bring a helicopter full of money and they touch all parts of the economy, everything from buying paper clips to actually renting helicopters. Mm-hmm. Now, the role of the film commission started out originally, actually, there was a guy out west it was a government official that saw a Western movie had come into Colorado and said, wow, these people spend a lot of money. We need to organize and actually proactively go after this work, because these people come in, they're like super tourists with a payroll. They spend all this money and, it's great for the economy. So the first film commission was born. And so it started out as first film commissions were like a permit granting entity liaison between production world that runs at 190 miles an hour and government world that runs a little bit slower, right? So you would have a film commission to help you get through the red tape of government to solve problems of shutting down a highway or landing a helicopter in a building or whatever you need to do. So
and you said the first one was in Colorado?
I think it was in Colorado. It was out west. It had to do with a Western film somewhere out there, I believe. So that was many years ago, I think in the early 70s or something like that.
Sorry,
so then,
continue.
So people, started to, create offices all around the world until now we have an organization called the AFCI, which is Association of Film Commissioners International. And these film commissions, we all kind of compete depending on what kind of topography we have. But it's all friendly competition. But we started out as this permit thing, and then it turned into kind of a production services entity where we would help producers find crew and other logistical things to help them solve their problem and make a movie in their locality. Then it became a location service where you were expected to have these huge location databases to make it easier for the client. That used to be you'd have to FedEx out manila folders of all these pictures and overnight and blah, blah, blah. And then I remember the moment it became digital and I was actually able to be online with a client and in real time find a location that they liked, and then boom, they're going to come look at it. I mean, that was just a milestone landing on the moon event, man. I'm telling you, I think it was in like 1999 or 98 or something. Then we became then incentives came along, right? So tax credits, grants to try to attract this work. And the whole misery of that started in Canada, really, where they decided to create a provincial and a national tax credit to bring work and actually buy an industry in Canada. And it was very effective. And they've got a great industry in Canada, thanks to the government, buying a percentage of those jobs in combination with, at the time, the exchange rate was so low. So you can make a $10 million movie for $5 million in Canada. Who's not going to go do that? So what happened was, when that went into play, there was a giant sucking sound from the United States of America. And all of the movie of the week stuff that used to happen. Remember the movie of the week you would see on ABC? All that stuff that used to happen in the United States went to Canada, right? So then in the United States, people said, well, we need to get in the incentive game, right? So then one of the first states was Louisiana got into it, and then Georgia, New Mexico, and then everybody. Now you've got the 35 states have some kind of tax credit or film incentive program of different sizes and shapes that basically they all kind of chew off about 25% of your qualified spending back to the producer to bring this work. So you went from a permit entity to a logistics entity to a locations entity to a financial entity. And then you have to be a freaking forensic auditor to make sure that so the role of a film commission has evolved. And in the middle of all of that, you also have to be a political House of Cards cast member to get to the political process to make sure you can go up on the hill of whatever state capital you have to fight for the incentives, to get the incentive pool increased, to deal with that. So as a film commissioner, you have to have this creative side of your brain. You have to have this kind of psychological ability to manage the egos that sometimes exist in the creative space that we deal with. Then you have to have you have to have politics, creativity in the same body, which is sometimes an odd combination to have, to be able to, walk through those landscapes and be successful at it, because politics, the sausage making of laws, is defies logic sometimes. It has very little to do with what makes sense economically. It has what to do with what can be politically successful at any given time. So that's the not fun part, Chris, that got into my business, right. In the second half of my career at the film office, is that whole political tap dance you have to do. It takes away from the time where you can be creative. Sorry.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
No. Has there been? Go ahead.
I was going to say, has there been a time where politics got in the way? I know you're close to DC. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Probably unlikely, but has there been a time where politics has gotten in the way of maybe a project you could land if you could just sort of work your magic politically?
Well,
are there any stories around politics that you can share?
Well, has there been a time? I mean, it's just constant. Because here's the thing, Chris, is that I can point to probably $500 million worth of production that we could have had in Virginia had we had enough fuel in the incentive tank, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's just my selfish kind of role about it, that of course we want as many incentives as we can have to kind of grow the industry in Virginia. And all the states are in the same kind of competitive basket of trying to get more and more and more, because as you know, in our industry, there's an insatiable appetite for free money. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard. So no, I can point to very specific heartbreaking projects. For example, we were working on a little movie in Virginia called Big Stone Gap out in Southwest Virginia. And one of the producers was a friend of mine named Donna Gelati. She's a very successful producer. And she had done a lot of big movies, but this little tiny movie she's doing, we became very close friends. And she called me one day. She said, Andy, I bought the rights to this book. And it's about these Virginia women, and they were African-American women, and they worked at NASA. And they used to do the calculations that helped get John Glenn around the earth, and they called them the colored computers of all things. And, these were these brilliant mathematicians that were from Virginia, and they worked at NASA Langley in Hampton, Virginia. And we've got the rights to this book. And she told me some of the story beats. I said, that sounds amazing. So she sent me the script, and it was one of the most amazing scripts I'd ever read. I was one of the first people to get to read it. And it was a movie called Hidden Figures. And right. Of course, a Virginia story. So then, of course, Donna is like, well, of course we want to film it in Virginia, and Fox was producing it. And so I'm like, of course, Donna, we're going to do this. So I started scouting and figuring out all the locations. I actually started talking to NASA because I had some contacts there from a previous project, and started to work on permission to film at the actual locations where Hidden Figures story occurred. Started working out all those details, and they were moving forward, and we were going to make Hidden Figures in Virginia. And we just did not have enough tax credit fuel. So where do they go? They went to Georgia, where they have, a big pile of tax credits down there. Yeah. And they've grown quite an industry. But that was a heartbreaking thing, to lose Hidden Figures to, this great Virginia story, to another state. So does the political process get in the way? Yes, if you don't have enough fuel in the tank. But sometimes you can't really fault policymakers, because there are a lot of priorities. States have to build roads, hire teachers, police, and as much as we come before them and say, look, we need incentives for the film industry because it's returning $10 for every dollar we put into incentives, there will be another constituency coming in. Well, if you invest in biomedical, we're going to turn 13 to 1. And over here, we're going to turn 15 to 1. So there's everybody coming through the revolving door with a story. You just need to find a legislative hero that's willing to take it on as their issue. And it's such low-hanging fruit for people to attack, because then people go, why are you giving money to Hollywood? Hollywood doesn't need any money, but right. It's the competitive reality. And what I try to tell them is film incentives are not about money for Hollywood. It's about a job for Holly Smith. That's this single mom, makeup and hair technician that doesn't want to have to go to Georgia, wants to be able to stay home in Virginia and work, so that's one of the things we use to try to overcome that argument. But it's maddening. The incentive thing is maddening. I wish it would go away and we could go back to the old days of where we were competing on the best location with the greatest logistical solution, first one at the door, to be able to start to solve the producer's problem and compete on that level. But it's just not where it is now.
Yeah, it seems like it's a race to the bottom. I'm here 100%. In Tennessee, and so we lose a lot of things to Georgia, I would suspect. Bob Raines is our executive director down here. And he talks about the great workers that we have in Tennessee in film, and how you can sort of get, let's say, 2x the work for, let's say, 3/4 of the cost if you stay in Tennessee. We leverage the music industry quite a bit here. So the credit is outrageous. I think it's 37.5% if you do your score and spend $50,000 on your score. That's just a giant chunk. And so we've become Tennessee has become the second largest place for scores in film. And it creates this unusual sort of race to the bottom competition. And if you're in a balanced budget state like Tennessee, I think it's become pretty obvious that rate's never changing. They're not chasing Kentucky. They're not going to chase Louisiana. They're not going to chase Georgia. It's just not going to happen. And meanwhile, those who are willing to chase, they've destroyed certain industries. We've had a few people that run or own or work in visual effects, and that industry, the way it is bid out based on subsidy is unbelievable. They really have to work hard to turn a profit in an industry that was once a high margin industry. So it's a big problem, and I'm glad you brought it up. You did also talk about the details of you're working it out, you're going to get things ready to go. And you're very used to that because before you were director, you were a location scout for a decade. what are the most underrated locations in Virginia? If someone out there is thinking about coming to Virginia, someone in the audience is thinking about coming to Virginia to film their next feature or whatever it is they're going to do, their next series, what sort of things stick out to you in terms of like, wow, you could shoot at this place, this place, this place. It could look like that place or this place.
Well, yeah. So what's great about Virginia is in a holistic way, you can find so much in a small geographical area. As you know, we've got the mountains to the west, the beach to the east, you've got DC to the north, and there's never a shortage of drama or stories coming out of Washington, DC, right? That somebody's going to make a show about, whether it's CIA intrigue or political scandal or something. There will always be some kind of Washington thing. And then, of course, historical architecture, there's tons of that, but we also have contemporary architecture. So, I mean, we rarely play Virginia as Virginia in the work that we do. We can play so many different things. I mean, we've played everything from El Salvador to Paris during the French Revolution, And in particular, Richmond is unique in that Richmond is the northernmost city with Southern architecture and the southernmost city with Northern architecture. So in Richmond, you can play Boston or you can play New Orleans. You can find architecture from both sides. So filmmakers love Richmond because of that versatility. You could just turn the corner and find a new look, right? And then you can turn the other corner and find a great restaurant to eat in, So it's about the lifestyle too. There's a lot of culinary scene here is really hip, and it's about that and being able to do the work in an efficient way where you're not stuck in traffic on the 405 for 2 hours trying to get to a location, right? So it's that ease of getting around, ease of, regulations that we have in the work environment here are pretty good. And then because our experience in my team at the film office, that we have such a deep contact database that we can solve problems at the last minute, that we become a true production partner. And, you develop that relationship with these clients where you develop trust, as I kind of maybe touched on before, that you get trust where, some film commissions get the reputation they're going to say whatever they can to get the client to come. And then the client shows up like, well, wait a second, you said, it never rained here or something like that. And, you got to keep the trust with them. And I think that I've, kind of earned that over the years. In fact, sometimes a client will call me to solve a problem in another state. I've worked on projects where I had a locations manager friend of mine said, man, I'm doing this film outside of Pittsburgh, and it's Norfolk Southern Railroad, and they have a railroad trestle right by our set, and I need to put a light up on the trestle. I can't get anybody with Norfolk Southern Railroad, which at the time was based in Virginia, to help me get permission to put this 10K light up on the trestle. Can you help me out, man? Because he knew I would, jump on it for him. And sure enough, I did. And I called my people, and within 6 hours, there's a guy on a highboy coming down the tracks to help them, get permission to do it. So, I mean, those are the kind of heroic things you do that, draw trust out from your friends that are also your clients.
What is the incentive rate and the minimum spend in Virginia?
Well, the minimum spend for tax credit is $250,000.
Okay,
it's even lower for our grant pool, because we have a tax credit pool and a grant pool. Some states don't have this, and the reason we have it set up this way is that the tax credit pool is based on your spending, and the percentage you get of that is from 15% of a base up to 40% for the Virginia local resident hires. Right, so we will pay 40% of the Virginia crew member wages. Right. Wow. So that gives you a composite rate of about 25%, which is kind of where the market is, about 25%. But the grant pool will use it over here to extract deliverables out of the client. And I believe I can take credit for, we were kind of the first state to work with the client to say, okay, we're going to do the tax credit over here for your spending. But if that's not quite as good as Georgia, we've got a little grant pool over here that we're going to break off some grant money for a deliverable. And that deliverable is going to include, we want you to produce at your expense a commercial for Virginia tourism. And we want you to broadcast it on your platform and do basically a media buy for us. So the first time I tried to do that was with AMC. And they said, well, we've never done that before. I don't think I can get it through the media buy department, all that stuff. I'm like, well, we're trying to be innovative here. We want incentives to be sustainable. We need to be creative. You guys are creative. Let's get creative. So they agreed to do it. And in fact, we did this television series called Turn by George Washington Spies on AMC.
Great show.
Great show for 4 years. And cool. So part of our deal was they produced this commercial, learn more about American history, come to Virginia, visit Colonial Williamsburg, yada, yada, yada. And they broadcast it on AMC over 200 times, right? And so this was the only national advertising we really had for Virginia tourism, was through our unique deal and partnership with AMC. So then we now use that kind of in all of our structured deals if they have a broadcast element to it. If not, we get them to produce some content that we can just put out on virginia.org. We did a thing with Homeland. We did season 7 of Homeland, and Claire Danes did this cute little video, and we put that up there. We did a thing with Dwight from The Office. He did a funny thing about
Rainn Wilson.
Rainn Wilson. We had him do a thing about oysters, Virginia oysters for us. Mm-hmm. So we do these little video pieces that give us a piece of content that, think about it. How much would it cost to get Claire Danes to do a commercial for you? That's a lot of coins. So it helps the ROI of our incentive. It improves that added value, to that thing in a unique way. So that's what we do.
That's incredible. Speaking of incredible, segue man here. How about, I'm just curious if you can tell this story. Amazing story. That's why I'm laughing. The story of Harrison Ford, helping Harrison Ford, how it helped you land the movie Cold Mountain.
Well, okay. So this is just one of those stories I tell people when they ask, well, what are some of the crazy things you've had to do, to help clients? And there are many of them, but this is just one that stands out. So we're doing a movie up in Northern Virginia that Harrison Ford was in, and Harrison Ford flies his own helicopter, right? So he's a helicopter pilot. And I went up to visit the production offices. They were opening up, and we'd already scouted and figured out all the locations. So I went up just to visit the production office, to the line producer. And I walk in, I meet him, or not meet him, but I just talk with him for a while. Then I walk outside, and there's Sidney Pollack, the director, God rest his soul, and Harrison Ford leaning up against a Ford Explorer out front of the production office. So I just walk up to him and say, hey, I'm Andy, Film Commission. Welcome to Virginia. Anything I can do for you while you're here, just let me know. And Harrison Ford, reaches out, shakes my hand. His hand is like the size of a pizza. Huge hand. He goes, hey, nice to meet you. And he says, hey, I've got something actually. I've got a helicopter, and I really want to land here in front of the production office. And there's a grass field there by this warehouse district right outside of Alexandria, or in Alexandria city limits, right? And it's right there. And it's a space big enough for a helicopter, And he said, I want to land my helicopter here. And I called the police department. Harrison Ford himself apparently called the police department and said, look, what do I need to do? I want to land my helicopter here. And he said they thought it was a joke, and they hung up on me. I'm like, okay, whatever. So this was before 9/11. And I drove, said, well, I'll see what I can do for you, Harrison, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm driving back. So this gives me an opportunity, to help the client, to do my thing. So I get on my phone and I'm calling my contacts. And actually, on the way back between DC and Richmond, I get somebody at Washington National Airport Tower, right? I get them, the people in the FAA or whatever over there. And I say, look, try to get Harrison Ford, be able to land his helicopter here, blah, blah, blah. They said, oh, yeah, no problem. Just, when he's ready to do it, just, call this number, give him the tail number, tell him the weight, the vehicle, and we'll just make sure they know he's coming in and blah, blah, blah. And you can never do that in Washington now, believe me. So I say, okay, good. I've solved the problem. So then I call back to the production office to say, hey, Harrison wanted this information, blah, blah, blah. So I pass this along. And then a couple of days later, get a call, and my staff person says, picks up the phone and goes, Andy, it's Harrison Ford on the phone. I'm like, what? So I grab the phone. It's Harrison Ford on the phone. So he says, hey, man, thanks a lot. I started to work through that, and, we're going to figure it out. And he said, but I heard there might be another problem with the city. I'm like, what? He said, well, apparently there's an ordinance where you can't land a helicopter within the city limits of Alexandria. They won't allow it unless it's like a mercy flight, medical flight or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what? Okay, let me check into it. So then I found out there's a problem. So I call the city administration people there, and they said, yeah, it's in the code, man. You can't land a helicopter unless it's like a medical emergency flight or whatever. And I said, well, how can we fix that? He said, well, you'd have to change the code. And I'm like, well, how do we do that? He said, well, you need to get a councilman to, write up an amendment to the code. And so who do I talk to? I got a few names. I called a councilman. So they create this provisional use permit thing that we call the Harrison Ford law, basically. And I kept through this whole process. I kept in touch with Harrison Ford. Said, "Hey, man, we're working on it. We've got it worked out. We've got the votes. It's going to come up to committee next week. I'll be there for you. I'll speak to the amendment, and we'll get this provisional use permit worked out where it'll be in the code of law work out." He said, "Oh, great, no problem." He said, "Yeah, man, we get it done. We'll go fly around Northern Virginia. We'll check a location." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, that'll be awesome. Cool, let's do it." So I go through all this stuff, and we go up to the thing. We get it through the council, and we get permission to do it. They said the only way you can do it is you've got to have a fire department there, fire truck there that you need to pay for. He's like, fine. And have all the safety people standing by. Went through all this stuff, got it done. The guy did it one time, landed his helicopter one time. And out of all this, I'm thinking about, dude, Reagan National Airport is literally 3/4 of a mile from this production office. How about a limo? You couldn't land your helicopter there and get in a limo and come. But no, he couldn't do it. And then, of course, after all this, we never got him a ride on the helicopter to show him locations around Virginia. But what happened was Sidney Pollack, kind of seeing this whole interaction that Harrison was having with the film commissioner, I came closer to him, and he kind of saw how hard I was working to try to keep his actor happy, so we became pretty tight. And sure enough, then he said, "Hey, man, working on this Civil War thing. You guys in Virginia probably have a lot of great Civil War stuff, right?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we kind of have a little bit of that stuff." He said, "Working on this thing, Cold Mountain, so maybe we can make something happen." So sure enough, then Cold Mountain started working forward, and a great director, Anthony Minghella, came into town, and we scouted with him and Dante Ferretti, this incredible production designer. And we figured out all the locations of Virginia to make Cold Mountain. We had it perfect, the place where they were going to do the Battle of the Crater with the explosion and all these battle scenes. And we had the entire movie wired up right here in Virginia, and we were going to do it. And then Harvey Weinstein, who was the producer of the thing, got a deal with the Romanian army where they could use the entire Romanian army as extras for $125, right? So then they took the whole movie to Romania and built an entire town, because carpenters there literally for like $1 an hour back then or less. Wow. They built this entire town over there. But we did get a piece of it. We ended up getting, 5 or 6 days of it in Virginia and Colonial Williamsburg and around Richmond. So we got them to film part of the movie here that I must say is probably the most authentic looking piece of the film, because the rest of it in Romania, the trees were not right for North Carolina, where it was supposed to be set by any means. But I became friends with Pollack there. And then to kind of carry it forward, a couple of years later, Sidney Pollack is a guest of ours at the Virginia Film Festival in Charlottesville in UVA. And so, I'm on the board of the festival, and Sidney was coming in. And one of the things I do when we have high profile guests, I'm kind of the guy that takes them around and, make sure they get where they're going to go, and let's go get some dinner and yada, yada. So I knew Sidney. So I was wired up with him, and he said, "Hey man, I'm coming in my new jet. You got to meet me at the airport." I'm like, "All right." So I go out, he pulls into the Charlottesville airport in this brand new Gulfstream. I think it was a G5. I don't even know what the hell they're called, but it was a badass, looked like a warthog jet, and it was brand new. So I stepped onto it. He said, "Come on up, check it out." So I walk in. He had literally off the showroom floor. It had that new jet smell when you walked into the cabin. Yeah. Amazing thing. So then I take him, we go to this thing, and we're honoring him. I think it was the 25th anniversary of the movie Tootsie, right?
Yes.
I'm taking him in. He's getting his award, a Lifetime Achievement Award, Thomas Jefferson Award from the film festival and everything. And before he was going to get the award, I said, I said, Sydney, when was the last time you saw this movie? He said, man, I haven't seen it since I made it 25 years ago. I'm like, you're kidding me. He said, no, really. I said, no, we need to watch it. You need to stay and watch it. He said, yeah, all right. So I sat down next to Sidney Pollack and got to watch Tootsie for the first time the dude had seen it in 25 years. And maybe the last time he saw it, sadly. But then the other thing, we were walking down the promenade in the mall area of Charlottesville during the festival. And there's a regular Cineplex on the mall.
Yeah.
And a David Lynch movie was being advertised. And it was not part of the film festival, but it was Mulholland Drive, was playing at this cinema complex. We walked past the poster and I said, man, I really want to see that. He said, yeah, I want to see it too. I haven't seen it yet. I said, let's go see it. He's like, all right. So we walk in, duck in the theater, not part of the festival. And I sit down with Sidney Pollack, next to him, one chair between us to not be weird, right? But, I'm sitting next to him and we watch Mulholland Drive, which I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's a strange and amazing film, but it's weird.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, we both looked at each other and we said, I don't know what the hell that was about, but it sure was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
So it was great, man. He was a great guy, but that's my Pollack story. And that's kind of how Cold Mountain happens. It's, through these relationships and friendships you make, and you just be a good friend and you make good friends.
Thank you so much for that. That was fantastic and multi-layered as I knew it would be. And Andy Edmunds, the man who will change the law for you. What better endorsement to come film in Virginia is there than that? Like a guy who will get on the mat for you. That is
Virginia's for lovers and Virginia's for law changers.
And Virginia's for film lovers as well.
That's right.
As I know you like to say. You have some other big movies that War of the Worlds, Mission Impossible 3, National Treasure, Book of Secrets. Is there any film that's the most memorable to you, or anyone that was the most challenging to land or to shoot that sticks out?
A couple of them. Having been born and raised in Virginia, it was really a highlight to be able to produce or be involved in the production of The New World, Terrence Malick's film about the Jamestown story of Pocahontas and John Smith. Because as a kid in Virginia, you grow up in elementary school and you build that Jamestown fort out of popsicle sticks, and it's kind of part of your youth. And then you go visit Jamestown in elementary school on a school trip. So, having that kind of in the back of my mind, and then being able as an adult to go out and build this stuff and, make it happen, and then see such a master artist as Terrence Malick, to do his thing was just incredible. And then Jack Fisk, his production designer and partner, to see how he put things together. It was so authentic that Jack built the fort, with real raw materials. Usually in Hollywood, you would make some kind of composite to build the logs, but no, they cut logs with the same tools. And it was just crazy. They built the fort. And actually, so Jack, we actually found a place right around the corner from the actual Jamestown to build this fort. So the topography was almost identical with the right cypress trees and everything.
Yeah.
And Jack was using his best estimate to determine where certain points of the fort, what they would have looked like, because there was no archaeological evidence over at the actual site, right? So Jack was just kind of looking at the materials and saying, how would I build this? If I'm in Virginia in 1607, what kind of trees would be here? And how would I build it? And what techniques and yada, yada. And he built the fort, his best guess. Fast forward about 2 or 3 years later, they actually made discoveries at the archaeological site that verified what Jack had built for the movie, that was exactly the right dimensions and the right technique. I mean, it was really crazy. And so the other little kind of side story on that is some of the crazy things we do. So as part of the film, we had to have a couple of period ships, like a 1607 ship. Now, Jamestown has a couple of appropriate ships because it's depicting the period. Right. And we needed one of them, and we were going to use the Godspeed. And they had built a new Godspeed, so they had an extra Godspeed. So we needed to get the Godspeed around the Horn and up through this bridge and up to the set, right, about 9 miles away. And we had to go through a bunch of drama to get permission, but we finally got permission to get the ship going. So I was worried about this bridge that it had to come through, which was a very old drawbridge. It was one of those drawbridges that turns sideways. It wasn't one that goes up. It was old and kind of rusty. So I called my department I called my department of transportation people. I said, hey, man, this bridge going to open down there? And said, oh, yeah, we open it all the time. We open it like every other week. Not a problem. It'll open. Cool. I'm like, all right. So I'm moving forward. We're in like March. We're going to start filming mid-July. And then I pick up the paper one day, back when we were still looking at newspapers, and I pick it up and I see a little headline that says, Barrett's Ferry Bridge closed indefinitely due to failure. And I see this and I'm like, oh my God, we're like 2.5 months out. We have got to get the ship up to this $3 million set they built, or we are totally screwed and the producer's going to kill me. Right. So my first brain, my brain starts going through, well, we got to get a Sikorsky helicopter and strap the ship and lift it up over and get it through. Or we need to cut the mast off the ship and get it under and then reattach the mast or some crazy stuff. So, what do? You call the governor. So,
right.
I said, look, we got a problem here. This is really high stakes, millions of dollars on the line. This bridge has got to open. Because by this time, the VDOT, Department of Transportation, said, oh, well, yeah, we've got it there for bids. We're going to get it done. It'll probably get done next March. I'm like, no. Yeah. So I call the governor. We get in touch with the governor and we say, look, this is what the problem is. And to his credit, Mark Warner at the time, he said, all right, get it done. Tell him you got to get it done. So they put barges and cranes and equipment, and they brought it in within days and started working on that bridge and worked for like 2 months to get the thing operational again.
Wow.
And actually they got it to open the day before it had to go through. So I was down there with a camcorder on the day that bridge opened, just shooting the thing opening and the ship coming through. And then we got the movie made. But that's just one of those little crazy, film commission stories. We got it done. But that was an amazing film. The other film that just moves me in such a profound way, that was an unbelievable experience, was a movie called Loving that Jeff Nichols wrote and directed. And it's based on the true story of the couple whose last name was Loving, Richard Loving, and the interracial couple that got married in the early 60s in Virginia and were arrested because it was illegal to get married as an interracial couple in the 60s in Virginia. So this was the story of that, this movie about that love story, and just an amazing trial and an amazing result. And just such a powerful, subtle performance by Joel Edgerton was just incredible. And Ruth Negga. It was just an incredible movie. And I just think one of the best things we've ever done. And just so powerful to be involved, that having been born and raised in Virginia and experienced this racism and seen it, and the small town, as I get back to, that I grew up in, where there was racially divided, but I was raised by more culturally evolved, forward-thinking people that taught me the right thing about inclusion and not being no discrimination. And so it was just kind of a great kind of payoff for having experienced and seen that, to be able to tell that story and bring justice to these people. And then I went to the film festival to introduce the film the next year after we produced it. And so we're at the film festival. And one of the things I said is that, look, back when Richard and Mildred Loving were here, they had to sit in the balcony at the top of this theater in the back. And tonight, not only do we put them in the front row, but they're on the screen and you're here to see them. I mean, it was just great poetry and poetic justice that happened.
Absolutely. And that movie meant a lot to me. I'd known a little bit about it before the movie was made, simply because it affected my life. My dad is German and my mom is Black, and they got married in 1972. Tennessee had gotten pressure to, annul the law that prevented interracial marriage, I believe in 70 or 71, based on the result of the Loving case in Virginia. So if that hadn't happened, I just wouldn't be sitting here in front of you in the same way. My dad is also a product of adoption. I know adoptions touched your lives with your 2 sons from Ghana. So all in all, we have that in common. And I think without that case, it would have been just a harder life for us both.
That's amazing that this all comes back around, man. We've met for a reason, Yep. I love that. I love the magic of all that, man. And actually, Loving versus Virginia was the case that they cited with the gay marriage, laws. Without Loving versus Virginia, they would not have had that precedent as well. So it's very important piece of justice for America that, I hope we hold on to what those important things are. And in spite of some of the, kicking and screaming into the 21st century coming from some parts of our population, that, at the end of the day, I think the core base of America knows what's right, and hopefully we will get there together instead of dividing and letting these issues divide us. Right. Yeah.
As I've read and heard you say in my research, the answer is love.
100%.
Totally believe that. I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. So speed round.
Oh, the lightning round. The lightning round. All right.
Yep.
Do I get extra bonus for this?
You do, but you don't have to go fast just because I'm going fast. So feel free to answer completely and fully as you'd like.
Well, as you see, I don't have any short answers apparently because I just talk and talk and talk and talk. So I'm sorry.
That happens to be great for our podcast.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's a podcast. We can talk as long as we want.
That's right. What are the 2 best pieces of advice you've received in your career so far, and who did they come from?
Well, I'm not really sure where this came from, but it's advice that I share with people that is pretty common. I guess people have heard this in different forms. But really and I tell, students and young people trying to get into the industry that your destiny lies at the intersection of your preparation and opportunity. So you have to put in your 10,000 hours at whatever you do. And then that will create your own luck that when that window opens, you're ready to go through it. And then that's your destiny. I mean, that is such a key thing. Nothing is going to be handed to you. That if you follow that mantra, that is just, kind of the North Star there, that you do the work, the luck will come, and then you'll be ready to go through, and that's your destiny. I think that's one of the best things I received, and then hopefully one of the better things that I pass on to people. And then I just, my father taught me a lot about the importance of trust, and being able to the one thing that you can create yourself or destroy yourself is your credibility, right? Yeah. So you really establish good credibility that you're going to show up on time, you're going to get the job done, you're going to do the best you can, and then people will trust you to get it. And trust is just a more valuable commodity than financial wealth, for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I learned being a film investor and an executive producer in the films is that accountability in and of itself is leverage, and that people will pay you for your accountability, your willingness to put your name on it and then stand by it publicly. And if you do that, even when you fail, you'll still have your trust and respect, as you mentioned. You talked about going into the 21st century and moving forward. If you could provide filmmakers with one piece of advice today, what would it be?
Well, I would start it out with the obvious, that when I used to tell my kids that when I was their age, when they were young, that when I was their age, I had 3 television stations to choose from. And they look at me like I'm an alien, right? And then, of course, they say, well, why didn't you just go to the internet? They just don't get it. But we had 3 television stations to choose from. And now, it's infinite, the number of channels, literally, with YouTube and Hulu and Apple and all the streaming services. But add YouTube to it, and add the fact that with this thing right here, we're all broadcasters, right? So that just creates this opportunity, as we talked before we started recording, of you to be a storyteller directly to the consumer in unique ways that are just starting to be tapped and monetized in a way that you can really be in control of your own destiny as a storyteller, as a songwriter, as a creator. And when you combine that where we are right now, I just think that we're still in the infancy of that capability. As you start to, go more into AR and VR and AI, where that's going to go, I mean, who knows? We're going to be experiencing entertainment in multi-sensory ways that we don't even quite understand yet. But that just creates opportunity for people to be innovative in this space. For example, in the AR and VR space, telling story in that world is different from a normal narrative thing, right? So it's like multi-dimensional storytelling that's just a space that if you learn how to crack that nut, like no one is yet to get the Blair Witch Project of VR storytelling. You know what I mean? There's some good ones out there, but it's still kind of gimmicky, right? And we're still the hang up of the goggles are still, I think, a blocking force for us to really experience it the way it will be in the future some way. But there's just so many opportunities. So that's the kind of high level tech opportunity that's there, but down to its kind of core elements, that it's still old fashioned relationships, that you're going to make, that if you're in college and you're in film school, or even if you're not, whatever, but if you're on a film set, the way you get your next job is through the friends you've made on that set. What's next? What are you going to do? And if you work on that set and you show that you can get the job done, a lot of people can get the job done. But if you're the person that has the social skills and the human skills and the empathy and the willing to listen more than you talk, and become a good friend, that's the person that will have more opportunities to succeed, is that network of friends, of kind of checking your ego and realizing that people can bring things to the table that you may not have thought of. I mean, filmmaking, as you know, is a very collaborative process. And I've seen all different types of people that do it, and people that try to do it by screaming. Sometimes they get things done, but at what cost of the human experience,
right.
that leaves people with. So, being able to have an open mind and collaborate, you can make better art at the end of the day. I believe that will be more fulfilling to more people. So that's my advice about that piece. I'm sorry, that's a very long lightning round answer. Sorry, man.
No, there's so much to dig into on it. What you described is something I call the fifth wave of filmmaking. And it's the moment where the technological part of the process of being that broadcaster is democratized. So meaning I don't need to go hire a full stack developer to build something that can broadcast me. And I don't have to lean on necessarily some social media application, because what will happen is creators will wake up and realize they are actually working at no cost for the benefit of a giant tech company.
Exactly.
And that if they stop creating for these sites, those sites will fail. Their stock will plummet. And you can already see this happening on certain sites right now. It's hard to do it as a group because you have to tell everybody, hey, stop creating. But what will happen is it will just be organic, where it'll be like, wait, the technology for me to do it is already there. I don't have to rely on Mark Zuckerberg anymore to promote myself. I can build the technology. I can create the Andy Edmunds channel, and now I'm just pushing my own stuff out and can monetize it any way I want, versus depending on someone else's. So I think that's going to happen in the next 10 or 15 years, that sort of fifth wave of filmmaking. You are around a lot of films. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I'd love a retort.
I was going to say, you're so right, but also it just amazes me. The technology in this phone, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
That I recently, recorded a tune through the pandemic, a song that I did, and we finished it, and we actually mastered it at Abbey Road Studios, which was pretty cool to do that.
Yep.
And then my friend producer Jody Boyd, who has an amazing studio in Richmond, said, "Man, the tune's really good, and you got to do a music video." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm starting to try to figure out how to gather my guys together and let's go do a music video. And I'm trying to put together a budget. I'm probably going to spend $15,000 minimum on a decent music video, maybe more, and trying to scrape that together. And then I said, you know what? This is a really kind of personal tune, and I'm going to start looking at my home footage that I have on my phone. So I go to iMovie on my phone. I put the track on the phone, and I start with fingers, just start pulling down little clips of video from my phone into iMovie, start editing together with my index finger. And in about, an hour, I had a 3.5 minute music video that kind of had a narrative theme through the whole thing, just because I shoot a lot of footage when I'm traveling or whatever, and with the family and kids and stuff. So it all made sense. And I'm thinking, wow, man, I'm able to do that just sitting in my chair with my index finger and create a consumable music video.
Right.
That, it's not great. It's real kind of, earthy and organic, but it's fine for the tune. And I didn't have to go through the $15,000 or the months of prep or the 3 days of shooting, and all that stuff. So that just shows you that there's just, so much you can do and then you have the way that you can get that content directly to people. I mean, it's just an amazing democratization of everything, as you said.
Absolutely. I watched the video. I thought it was great. It hit the emotional touch points, and you just went bananas on the guitar at the end, which I thought was awesome. If that was you playing.
Actually, that was John McNeil. That's
all right, John McNeil. John McNeil. I want to tell you, you're awesome.
He's ripping that up. He's the man. He is amazing.
He is ripping that up. And I think for VR to work for movies, it has to start. It doesn't have to, but I would like it to start in new types of theaters. In a new type of theater where there's an investment made to build out the entire vertical. So you own every piece of it as the theater chain owner, and the audience comes into the theater and they're behind a lens that is sort of imperceptible to them. And then what's behind that lens is more space. So basically what you're making is the goggle. It's the idea of have the people sit in the goggle. Right. So they're sitting in the goggle. That's
brilliant, man. I like that. Yeah.
Right. And now in the first film needs to be a horror film, and you have a horror genre film in VR inside of a theater that's basically a giant goggle.
That is brilliant. Now, but if you're at other sides of the space and you're looking at a 3D image inside that goggle, are you seeing, the left shoulder of the actor over here? How do you deal with that from the point? Everyone's going to have a different point of view then, right?
Exactly. So what I thought about was what happens at Universal Studios, the theme park.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to that Harry Potter city,
yes,
where they have
I have.
Harry Potter ride,
you
don't really go anywhere. You sit and you think you're going somewhere, but they've created an illusion for you, including wind and water and all these different things. You haven't gone anywhere. So again, it's a special kind of theater. Maybe you get those seats, and that can give you the sense of movement that you would have if you were standing in your room in a VR square and you could walk around.
Right. Yeah, that's where it's going, man. That's you're right.
Almost a movie as a ride.
Right.
I think that would get people out of the house, don't you think? That's just my feeling.
So. I'm with you. And then it would be an experience that people may pay a little bit more for, right? Because this separation of, the tentpole $300 million movies, it's cool to go see that. I went to see James Bond, recently, and it's cool to see that in the regular theater. But I'm telling you, I enjoy my experience on my 70-inch home HD badass 4K surround sound setup where I can, go get a snack on my, it's just a different experience at home. And I love the communal experience of going to the movie, but sometimes it's annoying when somebody's looking at their phone next to you too. So
I feel like the same thing has happened with sporting events, Andy, where the telecast has become so advanced that you really have to think, do I want to watch this game at home in my home theater? Let's say if you have that, or do I want to go to the game? Because there are definite downsides to going to the game, and there are massive upsides. And you just have to hope that the upsides outweigh the downsides are drunk people, huge lines for the bathroom. If ladies that are listening to this, you probably can't relate, but in a lot of these sporting events, you're dealing with a trough situation in the bathroom. Not good.
Right.
Long lines for hot dogs, hamburgers, pizzas, beer, whatever. But you're at the game. You're actually doing something with your real life. And to hear the entire crowd, let's say, roar at a football game is such a unique experience. There's nothing like that. Your TV can't. It's the only thing the TV really can't simulate exactly is the sound of a touchdown being scored and 70,000 people rejoicing at one time. It'll make your heart stop. But everything else about the telecast to me is superior. I mean, I'm seeing the players' faces up close. I see the detail. They've got 20 cameras. They've got 3 cameras on cables above me that are sliding through. And it's like, how do you beat that? They've caught up with the live experience for sure. Well,
the thing is, though, at that sporting event, when you experience that big, loud, irreplaceable thing, the reason you're enjoying it too is that you're not doing that by yourself. No one goes to a football game by themselves. They're going with their friend or a group of friends or buddies, and you're all having that energy together, Yep. So it's the same way with theatrical experiences that, you want to go see something that you can talk about and discuss, or just, get blown away by some cool stunts or whatever. It's just
the laugh
being
track
with people.
Phenomenon.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Like the show cueing you. Hey, that was funny. You should also laugh.
Why don't we have a laugh track here on your show tonight? We can
insert that. I have all kinds of like.
You got the gear right behind you, man. You could push the key every time we want applause or hilarious laughter. Okay.
Yeah. Or if we say something shocking, we can have somebody kind of yell a little bit.
Please.
Or say, or something like that. Yeah. I have thousands and thousands of sounds I can insert into this at any point. I could just make this completely goofy.
Do it in post. Do it in post, man.
We'll do it. We'll do it in post. What are the biggest creative and business mistakes you see newcomers making?
Well, a simple one with indie filmmakers that I always make sure they're cognizant of is always capture good on location sound. I mean, I hate to get down to such detail, but it is just, they'll go out and make a film and they go cheap on capturing dialogue on location. And look, a viewer will forgive a visual cue, but not an audio cue. If they cannot hear the dialogue, you're going to be back in the studio looping all the dialogue. So that's just kind of a simple thing that anybody starting out with a low budget film doing their first short or whatever, spend the money on a real sound person to, capture on location audio. And the other thing is that I think sometimes people just kind of develop to death something without just going out and just get something done, just get it done. Just go make a movie. I mean, even if it's a little sizzle reel of something, just shoot a scene. If you've got an idea for something that you're dying to make this movie and you've got a 110-page script and you're like, I got to do it. This is the thing I'm going to do, man. This is my whole life is wrapped up this. But if you're not getting it done, go shoot something, shoot a scene just to give somebody an example. If you're a director, whatever, and go shoot something so you can share it with them, get your friends together and try to get something done. Just sometimes people just wait thinking something's going to drop on top of them. I mean, that's one of the other things.
Love it. That's very, very sound advice. What happened in New York City in the MTV offices when you walked in with a VHS tape of Hard to Make a Living in the mid 80s?
Oh my gosh. So it starts in a theme park in Virginia, where I played in this country show again. And it was like a Vegas type show where, we had the backing band, and we had 6 singer dancers up front, and we played every country song you ever hated in 22 minutes in a medley. Right. And so the band was like, we were the cool guys in the back. And then you had 3 really cute girls and 3 dudes that would dance up front, like a Benetton commercial, racially diverse. It was just perfect kind of theme park set up perfectly for the masses. And so really the show was supposed to last 22 minutes. And Jody, my friend, the producer, still my friend, 30 some years later, my best friend, he was the drummer. I was a guitar player. And so after 476 shows, literally that summer, we would get to the end of our run and we got tired of playing that medley. And it literally was like, on the road again, just can't wait to get on the road again. She's a good-hearted woman. I mean, just that much of each song, just not much at all. And so we got tired of playing it. So we would say, okay, it's 102 degrees out here. What can we do to really make it hard on our singer dancers? So we would try to do that 22-minute show in about 17 and a half minutes. And they're up there clogging. They're clogging the whole show, right? They're like, and they're looking back at us like cursing us out and everything. So that was fun. But anyway, I set that up to say that after the show at King's Dominion, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my musical career in my life, right? And I had met this girl who was one of the singer dancers, very cute. And so I had this motivation to kind of do something big. And I had this song that I'd written, and I was struggling as a musician. So I wrote the song on Hard to Make a Living. It does not get any more simple than that. And I wrote this song, and I had in my mind just this whole vision for the whole video, man. I had every scene of the song just kind of figured out in my head for some reason. So I said, well, I got to find a guy who's done a video that's been on MTV. This was in 1984, kind of the infancy of MTV and stuff. There happened to be a guy in Richmond, Virginia named John Parks, sweet guy, who had done a music video of a local band that actually had been on MTV. I said, well, that's the guy I want. So I go and I find my way to John Parks and his beautiful wife, Charlotte. And I meet him for the first time, and I play my little cassette track. He said, oh, that's a cool tune, man. I like that. Really cool tune. What do you got? And I gave him my, scratched out notebook full of ideas and my whole narrative of the script and how to put it together. He said, oh, this is cool. Yeah, we can do this. I said, yeah, man, I'd love to do it. So he got on board, and then he said, look, normally this thing would cost about probably $40,000, which was a lot of money for a music video in 1984.
Huge amount.
He said, we can probably do it for 20. I'm like, that's still a lot of money back in 1984. So I go to my dad and I said, man, I got to do this. This is my career. It's my life. And my dad was so cool. He said, look, man, I'll help you with part of it. And I will co-sign for a loan for the other part of it. You didn't have to go to college. I didn't pay for all your college. So this will be your college, man. Just, whatever. Because I studied music at VCU. It says on my thing, I did go there, but I studied for like 5 minutes, music. They weren't teaching me how to be a rock star. And I'm like, I'm out of here. So I actually convinced a lady at a bank to loan me like 15 grand to make a music video. Right. And which was crazy. So made the music video, and we shot for like 3 days, built sets, really cool video, got it done. I'm looking at it going, wow, man, that's cool. We have a video now. Well, I got to get on MTV. So I get on the train and I get a little cheap briefcase and I put my video, and I had it in 3/4 format, beta format, VHS. I had all the formats ready to roll, take off to New York, found my way into the Warner Communications lobby up there in New York City. And I'm sitting in the lobby, and I walk up to the receptionist, and I'm like, I'm Andy. I'm from Virginia. I got a video. You guys show videos. What's up? How can we, someone should check it. She's very politely said, well, why don't you just leave it here? We'll make sure somebody takes a look at it. And thank you very much for coming. And I'm like, well, no, that's very nice. I really appreciate it. But look, I came all the way from Virginia. A lot of us in Virginia really put our heart and soul into this thing. And I just not able to leave until I know that somebody has seen the video, right? And she said, well, wait out here for a while. Maybe I can find somebody to look at you. So I'm sitting there for a long time, and I look kind of lonely, I guess. And this young lady walks past me, walking out, and she says, can I help you? I said, well, yeah. And then I gave her my sob story, and she said, I guess she felt sorry for me. She said, look, I'm going to go to lunch. When I come back, I'll take you back there, and we'll look at your video. I'm like, cool. So I sit there for another hour, clock ticking, in the lobby, and she comes back later, says, oh, you're still here. Okay, come on. So I grabbed my little briefcase. We go in the back of the office, and they've got this huge, CRT television on a big stand with wheels back in the day, with a big 3/4 deck under it, and this big monster tube television. Yeah, okay, so I gave her the tape. She sticks it in. She starts watching it, and she's looking at it. She goes, that's you. And I said, yeah, it's me. She said, oh, I thought you were like some agent or something. Like, no, that's you. And then she starts looking at it. She goes, oh, this is good. So, oh, this is real good. This is really good. She said, you need to go down and talk to this young lady down in Nickelodeon. Nick Rock's Video to Go was a video show, which was the sister channel of MTV. Nickelodeon at the time showed videos, and they had a video show. So I'm like, okay. So I go downstairs to another thing, and I show it to this other person, and she goes, oh, this is cool. Said, who owns the rights to it? I'm like, well, I own the rights to it. And she said, do you mind if we play it? I'm like, that's why I'm here. I want you to play it. Sure, no problem. So they actually put my video on a rotation on the Video to Go show. And it was between an REO Speedwagon video and a Tina Turner What's Love Got to Do with It video in rotation. And I had no record deal. It was like the stupidest move in the history of America, that once again, here you are giving free content to the man, right? And they played it for a while. So the idea was, I produced a video. It will inspire a record label to say, hey, they've got the marketing material. We're going to give the guy a deal. We're going to get a record deal going. And so I actually talked to some management companies and got some things going, and went out to LA and met with some people. And the guy out there really loved the tune, loved some other tunes. He said, man, everybody, if you don't have spandex, big hair, and you're doing heavy metal, you're not going to get anywhere these days. At the time, it was all about that. And we did not have any of the above. We were more like Steely Dan, whatever. It was a more kind of esoteric kind of vibe we were doing. Plus the music video had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Forget about that. People have to watch the whole thing to kind of get it. So, but no, it's a cool thing. And, but I got kind of, burnt out and disgusted with the whole process. Well, then ironically, I had this one management company that was really seriously thinking they were going to do something for us. And then it was Symmetry Management out of New York. And then he called me one day and said, look, man, we're going to have to throw all our power behind this other artist we just broke. And it was an artist named Amy Mann. And a band called Till Tuesday, song called Voices Carry, ironically, Amy Mann from Richmond, Virginia.
Wow.
And they put and I'd never met her before or whatever, but they put all their weight behind it. So we were kind of just, lost by the wayside there. So then I just, came back to Richmond. And, but the lesson of that is that in a moment when you think, it's like the worst time and the worst thing that could ever happen to you, right? When you kind of, wow, I'll never make it, life will never be what I dreamed it would be, right? And then I came back and I started playing, we ran that band for a while. I started playing in another band. And then my friend Jody, once again, who was not in the band with the video, but had gone off to tour, do some other things. He was back in Richmond. And he said, man, we've got a band. We got a house gig at this hotel. We've got a 4-piece horn section. We're playing Tower of Power and Earth, Wind and Fire and all this cool stuff. And we need a guitar player that can sing, man. You need to come check us out. And at that point, I was getting ready to move to LA and work in film, right? Mm-hmm. I said, okay, I'll come hear the band. So I listened to the band and they just blew me away. It was just a killer band. And I said, man, okay. So I stayed with the band. And that's where I met my wife, who was waiting tables there at the bar. And that's when I met her. And so we've been married for 33 years, man. And so you never know. So that life puts you where you're supposed to be, man. And then, I stayed in that band for several years. and then started my own band off of that called No Small Feat. And we were basically a Little Feat cover band. We played tons of Little Feat songs and some original stuff. And we were trying to, go down the path of doing original stuff for a while, but we never could find the continuity musically to find one direction. I believe bands, to get in the music thing, bands as democracies never work, man. You got to have one vision, one leader. This is where we're going. It's just, I've never seen a band as a democracy. You think it can work, but it doesn't. You got to get behind some vision as an artist or some sound, right? But we were all over the place with our sound. I was more kind of this New Orleans funky blues soul thing. And then my bass player friend of mine was a great musician. He was more into the Seattle thing that was starting to emerge at the time. So we never could put those two kind of grooves together. So, then we had our first baby and I needed health insurance.
There you go. And we come full circle in the conversation. This has been an incredible chat. And I really appreciate the story. I couldn't agree more with bands. I had a band, and that sense of democracy tore us apart as well. Before I forget, and before we wrap up, your song that you have out now, the one you did in 2020, kind of a post-pandemic, during the pandemic, very personal song. It's called Unring the Bell. Everybody can go watch it on YouTube now. What was the inspiration for Unring the Bell?
It's pretty personal, but I think the message in it is that it kind of comes back to love, man. That no matter how tough things can be, you can unring the bell. Unringing the bell is an impossible thing to do, one would think. And that's kind of, I came up with the hook on that. But you can, and it's really kind of going back to the core elements of love that is the fuel that can help anyone unring the bell. Whatever challenge you're in front of, man, it's just, you got to go to love and the people that are around you that love you the most. And but the song came from this kind of personal space, but then also became a thing about our nation at the time, and all of us going through this really screwed up year, and all of us wanting to erase 2020 and like putting behind us, thinking that 2021 would be, a new bright sunshiny day. And then of course, January 6th came on 2021 and kind of blew that notion. But yeah, it was about putting that behind us. That's why the website where you can, see the video and you can hear the tune, download the tune it's unring2020.com, unring2020.com. And you can kind of see the video and you can hear the tune there. But this is a tune that Jody, my friend, once again, the song, came about because he was inspiring me, saying, man, you need to go back to your music. If you're having a hard time with something, go back to your music, And I did. And the song came together, and then he just kept pushing me, man, we got to go in the studio. I could just cut it on guitar at first and on my phone, recorded on my phone, right? And in my memo thing on my phone, and sent it to Jody. He said, I got an idea for the song I'm working on. He said, man, that's really good. You need to come in the studio. And he's got this amazing studio. And so we went in there, we just started working on it. And then I got my friend Keith Horn, who's an amazing bass player that was in Nashville forever, that's from Virginia. And he played bass, and McNeil played guitar. We got amazing mandolin player, and all these just great musicians that came together to make this tune. And then we listened to it, like, man, that's good. Let's send it to Abbey Road.
Yeah.
We sent it there to get mastered. And then I don't know if you listen to it in phones, man, the production is pretty deep on it. It's really, it came out well. And then, of course I did the video with my finger, and it's just kind of out there now. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm not going to go schlep around playing clubs trying to support some record. So I'm hoping it'll get a sync deal on something one of these days. Right. And get it. It's kind of a good TV show song, or, somewhere as a, drop it in there. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And about the production too, just like it's layered. It's a good listen. I've listened to it a few times. I listened on YouTube. I'm glad you shared the website as well. People can go to unring2020.com. And can you tell us where else we can find you or see some of your work? Are there any social media spots, places on the internet, et cetera?
I think sorry, I should be prepared for that. I'm just not very good at marketing myself in social media. But look, the Virginia Film Office website, filmvirginia.org, filmvirginia spelled out.org, and you can find all the information you need for locations. I think if you Google me up or search me on YouTube, Andy Edmunds, Hard to Make a Living is in there. Find that on there. And there's some other tunes. I'll just send you some of my other tunes. I've got a pretty cool song called Find Time to Be Alive. That's really good tune. And that's on some site called broadjam.com. I mean, I loaded those things up years ago on broadjam.com. If you look up Andy Edmunds on broadjam.com. Mm-hmm. And there's one song on there that was on some peer-reviewed site years ago. And it's a song called Lost in Dixie, actually. And it's kind of a Little Feat rip-off song that I wrote that we used to play in my band live. And that song went through this peer-reviewed website, through the rankings, through all the categories, and it became #1 Earth. I mean, through thousands of songwriters around the world, man. And I don't know how, but apparently people like the tune. It's a pretty good tune. It's a great piano. Lee Covington playing keyboards on it. I think you'd dig it. I'll send you the link to that too. But I think that's on broadjam.com/Andy Edmunds, and that one's called Lost in Dixie.
I've got that written down, and I'm going to go do that right away. And Andy, we'll end on this. You have a dog named River, and it's my understanding that River wrote a letter to the Cape Charles, Virginia City Council.
Man, you did your research, didn't you? River could run for mayor of Cape Charles, Virginia, which is a little seaside town. That we have a vacation home there. It's like Mayberry on the water, this little funky little town of 1,000 people, which is very similar to the town I grew up in, a town of 1,000 people, but this is on the water, so it's a sexier place to be. But they were trying to enact an ordinance to require a leash law on the beach. So, of course, all of us go out with our dogs on the beach in the morning, man, and let them run wild. If they couldn't do that, they would go crazy. Right. So this River felt was just a major injustice to his canine entertainment. So River decided to write a letter to City Council and profess that this is an injustice that should not be endured. And it's a pretty interesting letter of how he wrote it. And it's a pretty good, passionate plea. And people were pretty excited about it. And hey, look, they did that. They rescinded the ordinance.
Wow.
River won. Dogs are free on the beach in Cape Charles, and life is good.
Do you still have a copy of the letter?
I do somewhere. Yeah. You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it. I would love if you would give us the honor of putting that on our website, on our blog page, and kind of connecting it to this conversation when it publishes.
I will. I'll go find it because I think it's the actual published one would be in the Cape Charles Mirror newspaper somewhere. So I'll see if it's there because I don't know where I've got it somewhere. The actual text. I'll have to ask River where he put it.
River's got it under his dog bed right now.
Exactly. He got it filed over there somewhere.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I can't wait to get that. That's going to be a blast. For
the dog, though, voice to text works better than humans.
Really? for now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll have to say I've actually gotten into some trouble with voice to text when you're in a text thread that you don't realize you're in, and the phone is always listening to you. So then you're talking out loud, maybe to yourself, or let's say you stubbed your toe and you're cursing. All of a sudden, Siri hears that, types it into a text, and there's that moment where she says, "Do you want me to send this?" And if you say anything but no, the thing shot off and you got some explaining to do. So some of these things are too useful for their own good. They have to sort of understand humans a little bit more. That being said, I think after this conversation, no one could have a more human moment than this. This was incredibly human, incredibly great. I learned a ton, not just about you, which is normally the goal, but I learned a lot about Virginia as well. So I've got to take a trip to Richmond, and I hope to get to see you in person, have a coffee, have a cocktail. I think we have a lot in common. We'd have a good time.
I would love to welcome you here, and we will have some fun, man. I'll take you to some great restaurants. I'll take you to Jody's studio. We'll check it out.
I would love that. That'd be amazing.
And you'll come here and produce a movie, though. You got to come here and make a movie.
That's exactly right. We got to.
You know what I always say, though, Chris, and it's so true, that making friends a hell of a lot more important than making movies. So I'm glad to be with you tonight, man. You're a great guy, and it was just a great conversation. And I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, let's do a round 2. And coming from you, that means the world to me. So thank you so much. And I'll talk to you very soon, it sounds like.
Sounds good, man. Take
All
it
right.
easy.
Be
Bye.
good.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
You've been listening to the Make It podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative, and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at FlamingYourHeart. That's FlamingYurHeart. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings, from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.
Tastemakers in the watch game like Gear Patrol have called their ceramic watch material almost magical and deemed their adventure-ready Cali Diver Automatic GMT the best sub-$500 dive watch, full stop. It's our friends at Movement. A Movement watch is built to run with precision, purpose, and X factors needed to make the best of the time you keep. From their best-selling automatics to innovative ceramics to more clean, inspired designs. Find your new Movement now at mvmt.com. That's mvmt.com.